this and say to these people what I'm saying to you. And if we can't get something better on this visually intrusive site, I would be very disappointed. And quite honestly, I think it's in the applicant's own interest. We're not talking of spending big money here. The caravans will still be clearly seen, but at least in an environment that won't be perfect, but will be a heck of a lot better than it is now. So I propose that we defer the application on those grounds, meet quickly with the applicants and see where we can go towards something better.
Mr. Stella, if you could help us out on this particular environmental issue, please.
Yeah, clearly with such a prominent site, it is something that we've been in discussions with the applicants for some time to get to this point. Part of those discussions have been to frame the exact nature of the application. Other elements have been discussions between the council's landscape officer and the consultant that the applicants have engaged to deal with the landscaping. They've had several meetings to discuss the scheme, and the council's landscape officer is satisfied that the scheme that we have received with this application is the one that meets her requirements for a site of this nature, given the open landscape. The open character of the landscape, the flatness of the area around there, and the nature of the development that we're looking to screen. Now, the trees that are on there, clearly they're indicating as though they are a row around, but when you look at the details of them, they are by and large extra heavy standard trees rather than just sort of saplings going in there, with some standards and some more feathered trees to give a bit of depth to it. So there has been some considered professional thought gone into it to get to the point that we're at here.
Do you have anything to add?
Trevor?
No, I've got this. Councillor Nash, followed by Councillor Mulholland, Councillor Duffy, and you want to speak, Councillor Fiddler? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just, when I was reading it, when the Lancashire County Council highways, they said they would like the entrance to be narrowed to a single lane. I can understand that, but these are large vehicles coming round, and would it impede them coming in if it was narrowed to a single lane?
Yeah, that's probably a fair point. The previous application that was approved required works to be done to improve the access, particularly this area here, what's now the inn to the site, and that's the in, that's the out. Those works were undertaken. This slowing down lane, the width of the access were all improved as a consequence of that development. The Highway Authority, in their comments on this application, have asked for the access to be narrowed down. We haven't taken that suggestion forward and feel that if this was appropriate, then clearly it's a 50-mile-an-hour road. Caravans being towed and motorhomes are both slow moving, so the deceleration lane and the wide access seem to be an appropriate solution for highway safety reasons.
Yeah, so we've got an access and an exit as well. So it's Councillor Mulholland.
I wonder if Mr. Stell could put the picture up that it shows the site in the distance from what appears to be a junction. No, there's one with some. You're looking that way, but it's further back. You can actually see the junction on the bottom left-hand corner of the photograph with what appear to be advertising hoardings. Well, it's not that one, but
That'll do.
that is the access to the site. That road there.
Yes, that is the. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. That's fine then. My only other comment. Yeah, that's the one. And that roadway there that we're looking at, that is access to the site.
Yes.
Right. That's fine. Thanks. The only thing that I would say is, originally, of course, this was a sort of linear development alongside the main road, and then became and asked for permission to have an extension to that, which we approved. What we seem to be looking at now is one of those photographs where the caravan just seems to be going back and back
Yeah.
and back. You know, the storage part of it. It is extremely intrusive. I mean, I'm not going to go against the approval, but one of the things that strikes me is, and I would like the officers to comment on this. This is Clifton Marsh and Freckleton Marsh. This is marshland. This was a sort of the flood estuary, sort of floodplain originally. Yeah. When you used to approach Freckleton, and to a lesser extent Kirkham, you were going across this flat salt marsh. That was the nature of it. I mean, when they start talking about putting up screening, you can't you can't naturally screen a flat marsh. What you're doing is actually changing, completely changing the character of the area. So by putting trees up there and creating the impression that you're looking at some sort of a copse of trees or a forest, you're completely changing the nature of the area. Obviously, better than looking at the caravans. But that is a massive intrusion into countryside, and unfortunately, I do think applications like this are changing. It's difficult for me to be too critical, because we used to have, as you come into Freckleton, on the bypass on the left, we used to have marsh, and we now have the Trough of Freckleton with the landfill site where they've made us little mountains and then planted trees on.
Yeah,
So, you know, completely changes the nature of the area. So
for the better.
it's just a changing world, I suppose, but it does concern me in terms of landscape. All we basically seem to do is say, put up some trees, put up some shrubs, hide it so we can't see it, and that's good enough. But it does change the nature of the area, Chairman.
Chairman, can I just comment? Right. So yeah, just some. Yeah, thank you. Just to reassure Councillor Holland that that's the original application site with the buildings on it, and so the actual outer boundary of that site is the same as the one that we're looking at now, so it doesn't go any further back than that original approval. Obviously that's got the buildings on it, it's got a different landscaping scheme, but you can see the area external parking in the lighter grey to the top of the screen, so that area was all going to be open parking for motorhomes, etc. So the actual area of the site is no real different to what we're looking at today. I think the point that you raise about the landscaping is sort of the difference in approach that had been sort of that you're putting forward to that put forward by the Vice Chairman, really. That what we have there is something that is more of sort of what you would view as a copse of trees with buildings behind it, as opposed to what we have now, which is more of a boundary. And the difference in the approaches are that one attempts to try and screen entirely the site, and the other one tries to soften the edges of the site. So, I think though, if you go back to Andrew, if you just go back to one of the wider photographs, the top one there, I think we'll do it. Yeah. So obviously, when you look at the general landscape, yes, it is flat, but within that landscape, you have various features. Just off to the edge of the photograph there at the top, as a continuation of the caravans, you can see the hedgerow alongside the road, and behind them you can see that there are trees there, and then along the hedgerow you can see that there are taller trees going up through the hedgerow. So the work that's been done between the applicant's landscape architect and the council's landscape architect has been to try to get a solution which is screens off that white mass of aluminium and fiberglass that you see there by softening that up. The introduction of a hedge will screen it lower down, and the trees going through will help to soften that hedge. So we're not saying that will be completely obliterated from view, but it will be softened. And by doing that, you have a landscaping scheme that doesn't in itself become too dominant within the landscape. That moss. Yeah, but just looking at them, I imagine they were there before Dobby's looking at the edge of those trees.
No. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. I've no real objection to the plans. I think the fact that the screening's been put in place is good. But I just do have one concern. Advertising. I mean, from some of the photographs that we saw there, there's a considerable amount of advertising on the fencing. And typically this type of development would have, I mean, we can see one or two flags there, and the top of the building has at least half a dozen flags on it as well. So would, if the applicant wanted to put advertising flags or banners on flagpoles the whole way down the length of the curtilage, is that something that they would need separate planning permission for? And would we be on top of making sure they don't do that without planning permission?
Very good point.
Yeah, in the discussions between ourselves and the applicant, obviously the extent of advertisement has been discussed. Advertisement legislation is separate to planning legislation, so they would need to make a separate application. We have clearly raised concerns over the extent of the flags and the banners on the fence and all that sort of thing. But until the matter of the principle of their use of this extended area is resolved, we haven't particularly pursued that with great vigour. I think if this application is approved, then clearly that's something that we will then move on to, because there would be no point requiring and then potentially approving applications for adverts for flags if the use itself was going to be unacceptable, and we were going to be pursuing enforcement action against that if that was the case. So I can assure you the committee it's something that's on my agenda to sort.
Councillor Fiddler.
I agree with the ward councillors that I'm going to support this application, but equally aware of its history, and following the permission granted in 2007, where the proposed landscaping didn't take place. And I think we all realise, and when we pass it on the road, realise just how sensitive that site is in open countryside, and it is very intrusive. And I think landscaping attached to this application is the paramount area of concern, and that was shared by Councillors Nolte and the Vice Chairman. I understood the argument that Mark Evans was putting forward in terms of totally screening. I think that would be a position taken by the Vice Chairman, as against softening the boundaries, which is the description of landscaping within the agenda. I do feel that we've got, as a committee, to be of one mind that the landscaping proposed is adequate and is substantial and does, and is something we all agree with. And if there's any concern, I wouldn't go as far, having listened to the debate, as deferment, but if there's a possibility that if we are minded to approve, subject to a further look at the landscaping, and whether the total screening proposed by the Vice Chairman or the softening of the boundary proposed by Mark Evans, if there's something in between, then I would say, well, you know, let's have a look at it, if that's possible. Don't want to delay. I think it's very important. And if the committee are minded to approve, subject to a re-look by delegating it to the officers and ward members and the Chairman and Vice Chairman, fine. If you feel that's too bureaucratic and let's get on with it, then make that decision.
Okay, so that's a fair point. Just a minute. It's a fair point, Councillor Fiddler, and I think I'd like Mr. Evans to comment, please.
Chairman, yeah, thanks. The yeah, I mean, if the committee want us to look further at the landscaping proposals here, then obviously we can look at it. And obviously we've got to bear in mind here that there's been two sort of landscape professionals been looking at this application, and they've come up with what they consider to be an appropriate solution. But as the committee is well aware, there's never just one solution to a planning issue. So that is something that you know, that we can look at again at. So if some general guidance, obviously, into the direction of travel in terms of the type of landscaping. I mean, are we saying that we will want to sort of beef out some of these areas to make more deeper bands in parts or in its entirety, or I suppose really some guidance as to what the committee wish to see in terms of landscaping.
Could the proposer and seconder, do you have anything to say about this particular issue? Are you in agreement with the Vice Chairman? The Vice Chairman wants more infilling rather than just saplings. I think that's fairly obvious. Or would you like the Vice Chairman to extend his information?
Chairman, if you're turning to me,
I'll take it back to the Vice Chairman in
I
Mr.
don't want
Collins.
delay, and I'm quite happy to second what the portfolio holder suggested. I mean, in principle, the more area you have for landscaping, the more opportunities you give to the landscape architects to perform. And I think at the moment, all we've got is a very, very narrow strip. How they perform, I don't really mind, but I do think it shouldn't be a less area than that which we originally approved. So if we can move in that direction, as the officers have said, and I'm more than happy to, instead of proposing something, to be seconding what Councillor Fiddler has said. In other words, that in principle we go ahead subject to those negotiations.
Yes, Councillor Collins?
I was going to say, Mr Chairman, that as this application is largely retrospective, I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on the applicant if we do take a closer look at the landscaping.
Well, I don't think much of the landscaping at present, so any increase of landscaping is a benefit. So, Councillor Speak, do you want to say anything about that?
Chairman, if we can beef up the landscaping a bit more, it's better. More trees, the better, I suppose. More natural looking. So I'm quite happy to move the approval with...
Mr Speak's going to... Mr Stella is going to extend that.
Apologise, I just need to take a moment. Right, the plan that I can't find that showed the previous approval was the site plan. The actual landscaping scheme submitted for that application wasn't quite as extensive. Excuse my illegible scribbles, but it was not dissimilar to what we have here with a solid band around it, rather than the more elaborately filled in corners scheme that that we had before, which I really wish I could find. What I would suggest as a way forward is the applicant's representatives are in the room. They've heard the debate today about the quality of the landscaping scheme. Would there be merit in perhaps looking at a scheme that, whether it had the same boundary all the way around, but it had areas where it came in and out, and you could do something like that? I'll undertake some discussions with the applicant's representatives on that basis. In terms of procedurally, condition 1, I believe it will be on the agenda, lists the plans that are approved, one of which is the landscaping plan. Yeah. There is then a condition that requires that be implemented by the end of March. Yeah. Perhaps if the recommendation was amended to be one of delegate to officers to approve subject to a revision to that part of condition 1. Having heard the debate, whether that needs to be in consultation with the ward members and the chair and the vice chair, I'll leave that up to you, but I am conscious of, I'd rather get the landscaping in sooner rather than later to make it easier to get it in now, rather than prolong the current harm that has been referred.
I think, members, we're just extending this debate forever, and I think Councillor Fiddler's recommendation is subject to further negotiations and delegation to officers on that condition. I think that clarifies it and covers it all. Councillor Jakes?
Just one point I'd like to make is the only recommendation we have heard about the infill around the site was to have hawthorn hedging. I would like it to be a little more diverse for the wildlife that might be in the area. Thank you.
I think we've covered the subject, further discussions and delegated to the officers and ward councillors. Okay? Everybody happy with all that? Yep.
Sorry, can you just clarify in terms of the vote? Is this delegated to officers or in consultation with members, etc.? Thank you.
Chairman, I'm happy to let, personally, the officer deal with it. I'm sure.
Got that? Take the business of the councillors delegated to approve subject to the officers' recommendations. Okay, everybody? Yep. All those in favour, please shout. Any objections? Abstains? No. Unanimous. We're going to deal with the items 5 and 6, but I think we should have a comfort break. Yeah. So if we could try and get back for 12 o'clock, please. Who's doing? Okay, members. It's 5 and 6 next. So members will deal with item 5 and 6 together, so it's a one officer. The officer will actually do the full, both applicants, and then we'll have a separate vote at the end.
Okay, just to hopefully make this as clear as I can, the applications 5 and 6 on the agenda relate to what's known as the Hastings Point site. You may know it as the former Aegon site, so it's in Lytham, Balham Road, Lytham Railway Station, Little Mini Roundabout, South Park, Balham Road, the main Aegon building here. So we've had this site on the corner, we've got trees down this, the green bits is protected woodland. The white bit's an area that has planning permission for the erection of 33 dwellings, with 23 of those being market properties and 10 being a 3-storey apartment block, which was to deliver the 30% affordable housing that was required from that development. Item 6 on the agenda is an application that relates to a variation or requests a variation of the Section 106 agreement, so that rather than providing the 10 affordable flats on site, the affordable housing contribution from the development as a whole is delivered by way of an off-site contribution. With the contribution being proposed is the gift to the council of land at the former Quicksave site in St Anne's, along with the a sum of money of £300,000, which the council would then use with its RSL partners to deliver an affordable housing scheme, which would provide for the transfer the affordable obligation from this site, and also provide additional affordable units for the benefit of the same labour market, the housing market, sorry, the same Lytham and St Anne's housing market. The other application, application 6, relates specifically to the part of the site where the 10 affordable apartments were to be sited, and seeks planning permission to replace those with 2 market dwellings. So we would go from, I do have a better plan to show that. Hopefully you can see that's the area in quite close detail. So this is the access to the site. All these properties have now all been built, with the exception of these. There's been no start in this area, and the site compound and sales office has been in this area. The planning permission in place is for that rectangle to be a 3-storey apartment. The planning application in front of us, item 5, is for that to be replaced with 2 detached dwellings, which you can see that it's the Houston house type, which is the same as the one that's been built here. And then this is the Springfield house type, which is the same that's been built on the other corner. So looking at some photographs of it, we're looking at, this is the Houston, and the Springfield is the one that's got the turret in the corner here. So this is the one that's on the actual corner of South Park and Balham Road. So the application item 5, and I'm sorry that way around on the agenda, but the application item 5 relates to the physical works for the change, and application item 6 relates to the alteration of the 106 agreement to, like I say, remove the affordable housing obligation from the 106 and replace it with the land at St David's Road and this sum of £300,000. The officer position on, if I start with item 5, because that's slightly more straightforward, the officer position on the physical works is that the dwellings sit comfortably in the street scene,
One meeting,
have an
please.
acceptable relationship to neighbours, and will be acceptable development in their own right. The issues relating to item 5 for the 106 variation, you'll see something in the late observations paper on there which just embellishes slightly what's in the report, but it's considered that the QuickSave site has had an application for 32 properties supported by this committee, albeit that's not been issued because the 106 has not been signed. But it's considered that establishes the principle of residential development on that site. It's obviously in a residential area, and the position, that's the site in question. So that's the site we're talking about off Hove Road and Warwick Road. This is the scheme that was supported by committee in elevation. So there was a 3-storey building with apartments and townhouses in it, which sat on the site like that. So the position that the officers take is that that site, that scheme, or a potential even a variation of that scheme, would give a better mix of house types than would be approved, than under the approved Hastings Point scheme, the 10 apartments. It serves the same housing market in Lytham St Anne's. It offers the same locational benefits in terms of proximity to employment and bus connections and services and shopping and the like. And therefore, the officer recommendation on both applications is for support, with the one for the 106 to be for the amendment of that illegal agreement, and for the one for the physical works to be granted planning permission once the legal agreement has been amended.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chairman. On the face of it, it would seem that a development like this in St Anne's would provide more affordable housing than 10 flats in Lytham. But do we have any idea of how much need there is for affordable housing in Lytham? Because I don't see why all the time things in Lytham should have their affordable housing placed elsewhere, basically.
That was actually one of the questions that we discussed on Monday, and I refer to the building which is going to be converted, which is the Aegon site next to Booths, which is going to have a full 30% affordable at present.
In that case, then it's an indication that there is a need in Lytham. That particular site that you're talking about, there's no, we've only got outline planning permission for that at the minute, haven't we? There's no real indication about when that might actually happen. It could be years off. And in any case, we're told often enough that we should look at each application on its own merits. Now, this application we did look at, and we did say that we should, we approved. the affordable housing on that site, and we approved it on that basis. And I'm not really sure why we're coming back here and trying to change and move the affordable housing somewhere else. Regardless of what happens in any other site in Lytham, if we approve this, then we have 10 fewer affordable residences in Lytham. And not everybody in Lytham can afford to buy a big house on the front. There are people who could benefit from affordable housing in Lytham, and it's not right that we say if you want an affordable house, then you have to move to Kirkham or St Anne's. I don't think that's right at all.
It's a good point, and it was raised on Monday. I'm going to invite John Cottam, who's been dealing with this and who's sitting in the corner, to come up and address the committee, because we could have this argument for quite a long time, I think. All right, John?
Everybody hear that? Yeah. Thank you. Affordable housing is needed across the borough. All the housing needs studies we've done in the past have dealt with Lytham St Anne's as an entity and dealt with the other rural and built-up areas of the borough separately. The affordable housing need in Lytham St Anne's is probably around 2/3 of the borough needs. So if you look at the most recent study that we did about 18 months ago, the affordable housing need was 162 per annum for the borough, and about 2/3 of that would be needed in Lytham St Anne's. I'm content to deal with Lytham St Anne's as its own separate entity. I'm trying to meet the needs of the borough in whatever location I can, and I see Lytham St Anne's as the built-up urban core of Fyle Borough or Fyle Council, and as such I'm content to try and meet the needs of Lytham St Anne's within Lytham St Anne's, as opposed to separating it down to smaller districts of probably Lytham or St Anne's or Ansdell or Fairhaven. It's a matter of how small we would wish to go. I see the advantages as being quite distinct in that there's a potential on the quick save site from the previous application of 32 units compared to the offer on Hastings Point of 10 units. And I see that as a distinct advantage to affordable housing provision in the borough and indeed in Lytham St Anne's. So that's my perspective and that's my take on affordable housing. I hope that helps.
I'm sure that the members are probably asking you questions. So if you don't mind, John, if you just stay there for now. I've got Councillor Speak Nulty Nodes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more worried about inclusive communities. If you have all your affordable housing, 33 units at the quick save, and on this site it's proposed 2 large houses to replace the affordable housing, we never will have inclusive communities. And I don't know what you think about that. To me, I think it's far worse to have all your affordable on one site. It should be a mixture for a happy community.
Thank you. I think that comment is valid. It's a good point of view. I think it has more merit perhaps where in the past we built estates of hundreds of what were council houses but affordable houses. I think in St Anne's in the quick save site we're talking of up to 32 units within an already mixed community of own occupation and private rented, and I feel that such a development would sit quite nicely in that particular area.
Are you finished, Councillor Speak? Yes. Yeah. Councillor Nulty?
More of the same, really. I just see this as elitism, and we in Kirkham and Wesham have had developments, and they have been mixed developments, and I do see that, as Lytham Councillor has just said, there is a need actually in Lytham. it's a long way from that place in Lytham to St Albans Road area, which is where QuickSave is. And I think these are distinct communities, and distinct communities need their own affordable properties for whatever reason. I can see sorry, I know it wants to turn me off, but I'm quite used to that. But, you know, our policies state that affordable housing will be delivered on mixed development. We have done it. It's been successful. There's not a problem. On 2 estates, there's not a problem. You're putting... This is wanting to be in the most deprived area of our borough, Central Ward. I presume it's in Central Ward. If it isn't, well, it might just be outside, but it's not far from St Albans Road. That's how I see it. And I just think that we're all aware of the Lower Lane estate and the problems there, and I think you're just inviting more of that kind of problem. And all these other excuses in this report about there are trees that are going to be affected and things like that, that was known about when this application came in, and it should have been adjusted to take account of that. And I just can't agree with any of this. No, I just think Lytham has its own needs. They've not been catered for time and time again. They've been removed from it, or they've not been put in it in the first place. And I think it's time Lytham's needs as Lytham were addressed. If Wesham's addressed separately from Kirkham, then I think we're closer together than that. And I just think this is totally wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Odes.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I can see on the face of things that this makes sense, because we're getting a piece of land, we're getting extra units, and we're getting some cash. So the bribe seems very good. But I have to agree with the previous speakers. Every time it would appear we get applications in Lytham, we have developers, and particularly this one, coming and saying they don't want to develop the social housing part. And I think it's really bad for social cohesion. I think it's absolutely appalling to ghettoise areas, and that's what we're in danger of doing if we keep putting social houses in certain areas. And it's downright insulting, because people who live in social housing are very nice people in the main, just the same as everybody else. And, you know, what's being said here is we don't want that kind of person living here, or that's how it appears to me. I think it's appalling. I think it's insulting. And I don't think that we should be placing social housing in the same areas all the time. I'm old enough to remember the problems we had when Lower Lane was a sink estate. It's where everybody was dumped, and all the problem families were dumped. And it's taken in excess of 20 or 30 years to try to lose that reputation, because Lower Lane has loads of very, very nice families on there, and they get tarred with a brush. I think it's appalling, and I think that we should be